Welcome to Worlds Collide, a wrestling card podcast for wrestling fans by wrestling fans, featuring Tony Vella from WrestlingTradingCards.com.
This is like a stock market.
And Zhan Morning from Wrestling with Cards on YouTube. And I'm not saying there's a right or wrong answer, I'm just posing the question. Join them as they navigate the world of wrestling cards, helping you build a bigger and better collection and making some money along the way. What's up, wrestling fans? Worlds Collide, back again. It's another roundtable. We'll start with Tony. Tony, how you doing?
You know, just living the life out here in Arizona. Got a brand new 3-year-old. Got rid of the 2-year-old and upgraded to the 3-year-old.
What's the temperature there right now? Because the rest of us, I'm sure, are freezing.
It is freezing right now. It's 63 degrees right now. What are you talking about? It's cold as hell, man.
63.
63 and clear.
I'm just going to bypass that. Let's talk to the guests. We'll let Ken start. Welcome to the show, Ken.
Hey, thanks for having me. I mean, cold is relative. I mean, it's in the 30s here, and I'm pretty cold. 30s in when you've lived in Texas for almost a decade is different than when I lived up north. That's for darn sure.
Oh yeah, I would assume that.
When I go from 115 to 63, it's cold, man.
It's cold. Yeah.
It gets below 80. I'm like, I got to put a long sleeve shirt on.
Yikes. All right, and we've got Mike on the show too. Mike, how's it going?
I'm doing great. And if we're going to talk weather, it was single digits when I woke up this morning, and that makes me excited because the pond out back is frozen. I can get out and ice skate and do all those kinds of fun things. So bring on the cold weather. It's wintertime, and that is what we're supposed to have in the wintertime.
Perfect.
And for me, wintertime is no better time than to talk wrestling. Of course, when is a not good time to talk wrestling? That's what we're going to do today.
There's no seasons in wrestling, sir.
That's why wrestling is so good. It never ends. Whether you want to go back and watch stuff from the 70s or you want to watch something from 70 minutes ago that's on some on-demand service. There's so much wrestling out there now. But we're here to talk about wrestling in the cardboard form. Ken, we'll start with you. Everybody knows the rotation of the show. Guests go first. Everybody's got a question. Ken, you're up.
All right. So I talked with you about this. So, you know, I see a lot of the wrestling card guys, and I have collected wrestling cards. I have some, but I'm definitely more of a, stick and ball sports guy, collect a little bit of everything. So I see a lot of people talk about why they're, or kind of bemoan that there aren't more wrestling card collectors and maybe why it doesn't get the respect of the other sports. So I have a few hypotheses on maybe why that is, but what I want to know from you guys is why do you think why do you happen to think that is?
I think me and Tony have talked about this quite a bit. It's just it's the lowest rung there is of collectibles, like even more than I think non-sport. Tony, we've talked about that. There's non-sport stuff that's not even as popular as wrestling, that's still more popular, more collectible in cardboard form. But then let's talk about just within wrestling itself. People rather have the figures. They rather have the t-shirts. They rather have 8x10s, like whatever it is. It seems like they gravitate towards that as opposed to the cards. I don't know if that's because even though they've had cards from, since, the 50s even, they didn't really start being mass produced. And that's probably being lenient with the term mass produced until the 80s. And then through the 80s and 90s, like I would see them if I went to a hobby shop. But if I went to a retail store up until the 2000s, I never saw them available at like Walmart or Target or anything like that to just pick up. I think that has a lot to do with it too. But it's one of those things where, people say, what do you like to do? Well, I collect wrestling cards. Oh, you like baseball cards? No, it's wrestling. And that's just kind of the stigma it's been attached to. I just think enough people don't know about it. I think that's partially changed a little bit with the AEW release. And me and Tony have both seen people coming in that hadn't collected before, the buzz around the product, whether good or bad, just people talking about it. I think that's changed a lot. My usually complaint, like I don't really care so much about the pool of collectors as much. I just care about the product itself. I wish that wrestling was respected at the same level of all the other ancillary stuff. It's never going to be as big as the big three, obviously. That's just kind of common sense in my opinion. But why are wrestling cards not up there with UFC, with Pokemon, F1, those kind of things. So, Tony, you got anything?
No, I think like I said, we've talked about this a lot before on various other episodes, and yeah, we kind of agree on that. But I got an interesting comment from someone who posted on Instagram about this similar topic. He said, just listen to the newest episode. He says, here's the point: 30 million people watch NFL every week. 2 million people watch wrestling weekly, and a majority of those are children. There's your answer for why wrestling cards aren't as popular.
Good point.
I think it's a very good point.
Yeah.
But I think the point that I don't think that we're looking for, like, why don't we have 30 million people, like, wanting to collect wrestling cards? I want to know why, of those 2 million people, and if the majority of them are kids, why are they not collecting cards when they collect Pokemon and other stuff? So
that's my exact argument as well.
So I'm just wondering, what it would take to get them to come into the hobby. So when I see and hear that place like AEW or on their television shows are doing commercials and advertisements, that's a positive for me. I think that really helps the community big time.
Yes.
I kind of feel like there's that aspect of a collecting culture that you hit on that, like you said, hasn't necessarily been there throughout history for wrestling. You've got football cards, basketball cards, baseball cards that have a history dating back to the pre-war era, the quote unquote vintage era, starting from the 50s. You have lots of people who have grown up collecting the other sports cards, whereas wrestling, yes, there were some wrestling cards, way back in the day, but it was really the 80s. What's that?
Wrestling cards predate any other sport cards.
But not at the same level. There were not mass produced, mass issued, wrestling cards until a more recent era. And I think that's one of those things that's going to take a little while for that culture to build in. I hear some of my NASCAR collecting friends say the same thing about NASCAR.
Yeah, I could really see the parallels there.
That T-shirts and other paraphernalia are very popular, but cards haven't been. They talk about going to races, and it's not uncommon that you don't see any cards, at races even, and things like that. And they ask that same question is, we've got NASCAR fans who are buying all kinds of other paraphernalia. Why aren't they as into racing cards as we are? And I think it's just the culture hasn't been there. But I think there's an opportunity for it to continue to develop, and the things that you're starting to see with additional advertising, with more and more content being produced that are connecting the culture of wrestling with the culture of collecting cards. I think we're going to start to see that continue to shift. I think as you start to see people who are looking for something new, different, quote unquote, out of the ordinary from the traditional sports, I think you're going to start to see more and more people open up to the idea of collecting wrestling cards and building that in as one of the things that they pursue and learn more about and dig into a little bit deeper. At least I hope so, because I enjoy the variety.
So I've thought about this a lot, and I wanted to do like a live stream with one of my friends who's also a wrestling collector, but he really collects the stick and ball sport. So I have a couple thoughts, and I just wanted to see what you guys might have to say about that. So it's funny that you mentioned racing, because I literally have right here, similar to racing, I think there's less ways to collect cards. Set collectors are minimal. Now, while that's maybe the percentage is close to the same as baseball or basketball, you just use the example of 2 million people watching wrestling versus 30 million people watching NFL. So there's a lack of consistency in new products. I mean, I really loved Chrome and Heritage, and Topps killed those off for 2 or 3 years. Yeah. Collectors in general, stick and ball sports is kind of what we have for comparison. It's all about the latest and greatest and what's the newest. And once the new thing comes out, nobody cares about the old one. Is where with wrestling, we have a lot more of these breaks. You hear the NASCAR radio guys talk about the breaks with Panini. They only get 4 or 5 releases a year. So I think there's something to that effect, less items to collect. You have your individual subject collectors, but there's no teams in wrestling. There's no teams, so to speak, in NASCAR. There are owners that have teams, but you're not cheering for the Phillies or the Reds. You're cheering for Kevin Harvick, Dale Earnhardt Jr. In this case, you're a Roman Reigns collector, or you're a, whoever that may be. And then a lot of those top guys are collected, but what about the others? Now, wrestling has a little bit in that the female wrestlers seem to be pretty heavily collected. So you kind of have that little change, but, I kind of parallel that with racing. Over in racing, it's the top 3 or 4 guys. And if you don't get those, you're kind of bummed. So I think there's some of that because you don't have the teams and some of those other things. And then the other thing I kind of came up with is, with the stick and ball sports, a lot of the market is driven by performance and prospecting. And you don't really have that with wrestling. And again, I can kind of say NASCAR. You don't have statistics, so to speak. You can't tell when a guy's on a hot streak, when a guy's about to break a record, other than, he's about to be the longest intercontinental champion or something like that. And then wrestlers, we talk about it being by performance, but wrestlers it's not necessarily by performance because they're at the mercy of the bookers or
Right.
Vince McMahon. Take Bray Wyatt. I mean, how popular was he? And just, poof, he's off TV all of a sudden. And I feel like, I don't know on the card market, but I mean, I feel like he had a very solid following. And all of a sudden, if the bookers can't figure out what to do with you in that particular gimmick, or Vince just decides he doesn't like you anymore, or, you're smaller, like how long did it take Daniel Bryan to go to the top? So those are just kind of some of my things why I'm thinking it's different. And you also made another point. You said wrestling season never ends, but think about all the stick and ball sports. They really start to spike going into the season. So there's not necessarily that lull. It was just something else I thought of. And I was just wondering what you guys maybe thought about any of that. Those were some things I've kind of thought about over the course of months.
All great points. I love the NASCAR stuff, guys. Like when I was kind of thinking that before, Mike, you said it, and then you guys started piling on, and I'm like, this is it, because there are other ancillary sports that are bigger, but yeah, NASCAR and wrestling are kind of on the same level, because I see more die-cast stuff for NASCAR sold than like anything like that and t-shirts. So, and I'm like, wait a minute, that's wrestling. It's wrestling figures and wrestling t-shirts. That's what everybody goes after. Great points. Like I can't disagree with any of that. It's hard. I think maybe for me, the closest comparison I can get to wrestling is Pokemon and Marvel, because it's so character based. And you talked about Bray Wyatt. I still see people out there, collecting Bray Wyatt stuff. He hasn't been on TV. I'm buying Killer Cross stuff. He's not been on TV and got cut. So that's why I think that if people would just kind of pick a character in wrestling, no matter who that is, that it would kind of give it more of a longevity, because that kind of, it's your player collecting. It's that, Ken, it's like you said, that the person is the team. So that's kind of what people could go for. But I think sometimes people are just having a hard time, like starting, like, okay, I like wrestling. I want wrestling cards, but what do I do? So I don't know. Tony? Yeah,
I agree with all these points. I think it's if you're going to get into it, I mean, it's just, you pick someone you like. You're going to gravitate towards someone you like anyways. It doesn't matter how they're being booked. Obviously, if you like them because of the way they look, or because of the way they talk, or because of their style, you're going to go after them. I mean, I'm going to be honest. I mean, I collect Extra Luma stuff. Never seen him wrestle a single thing in my life. I just like the look. As my wife says, I must be in the Nazis, but that's just, but it's just, I just think he has a cool look to it. It's like that. And, I gravitated towards that, and that's what I collect, and
it's affordable too.
Yeah, it's affordable. So it's just, I'm coming if I'm looking from an investment standpoint, I'm coming in at the ground floor right there. I don't lose anything, serious if he doesn't pan out to be anything, but if he does become something big down the road, I came in from the very beginning. I'm cool with that. But, that's where I got my high-end stuff with all my Kurt Angle stuff. But it just all depends on what you're into. I mean, wrestling's got something for everybody. I mean, most people gravitate towards the women anyways. It's a TNA factor. Always has been, even during the Attitude Era. That's just how it always is. I mean, so if you don't want to collect that, like, I'm not going after Kiss cards. I'm not going after all the autographs, Alexa Bliss. I'm R-Truth guy. I got to go after the R-Truth stuff, or whatever you are. I'm a Roman Reigns guy. That's what you go for. So there's a lot of variety in wrestling. Wrestling has always provided a lot of variety to choose from. So
yeah,
it's just it's a matter of trying to get at this person's statement, which I believe is true, of 2 million people watching wrestling every week. And the majority of those are kids. That's why I'm opening a brick and mortar store here, selling. My majority of my inventory has to be action figures and t-shirts, because that's what's going to sell and make me my money. Am I going to introduce cards to my customer base? Oh, hell yeah, I'm going to. But it's just, I got to go with what's making the money. And I just would love to introduce, I think we can have more people who are introducing the kids and saying, hey, cards, man, cards, that's where it's at.
Right.
That's why I wish that the manufacturer would make something so cheap that was for kids, strictly for not cartoony things where it's a drawing of CM Punk, driving up a ring or something like that, but a flagship product that would be at a price point of like, $50 a box or something like that. That's just cheap with no thrills, nothing really big, just something to get kids into it.
Mike, you got any comments on Kin's?
Yeah, no, I mean, nothing else. I think I agree with a lot of those things. I think we're kind of thinking along the same lines, especially from the comparison to NASCAR. I think it was a good point with the connection to one of those differences being that many of these wrestlers aren't necessarily in control of the publicity, the screen time, and quote unquote, the success that they're going to have in the ring. A lot of that can be predetermined. Obviously their personality and their screen presence is going to be a big determiner of their popularity. And that is something that they've got control of. But I think some of those things can just make it a little tougher to gain some traction.
My guy doesn't even talk.
That's true. That's a good point. All right, Mike, we'll go ahead and turn it over to you for your question.
Yeah, so I would call myself a peripheral wrestling collector. There's times where I struggle to find kind of where my place is when it comes to fitting in with the wrestling community, right? And so, for instance, I rarely have a chance to see the current WWE or AEW shows, live. And so I don't really know or have a connection to these current wrestlers. And since you and I have talked a little bit, Zhan, I've had fun getting into it and collecting some of the 80 stars and some of those sets and things that came out in the 80s and 90s when I was a much more avid watcher of wrestling. But at times in the current world, I have a hard time knowing or feeling like I don't even know where to start with some of the newer products. I don't always feel like I can fit in or engage in some of the current groups or some of the current threads. And so I was curious from you guys' perspective, how can we get collectors who are kind of more like me, who are kind of on the outskirts or on the periphery? How can we get folks like me to connect, even though we aren't necessarily experts on the modern product? Where can we go? Are there certain websites that we can go to learn more and dig in and be deeper? Is it just the WWE network on Peacock or DVDs, or what is it that we could do to help some of the peripheral wrestling card fans feel like we have a place, even though we're not in it as deep as maybe you are?
Tony, I want to give this to you first, because I just feel like everything he just said is kind of what you touched on before we turned it over to him. Like, you talk like, I'll just let you go before I start.
Well, I recommend checking out this cool website called WrestlingTradingCards.com.
Of course.
Beyond that, though, we live in a world now that allows us to engage in so many different ways with other fans and collectors out there. So, I mean, whether you're a Twitter user, an IG user, a Facebook, there's so many great Facebook groups for people. And that's what's kind of cool about the wrestling community as a whole, card community as a whole, is that it seems to be a more inclusive type of group of people who are willing to help newbies or people coming back into the hobby for after a long period of time. There's a lot of places to go to. Social media has made it so easy for people to engage now. So if you were looking for ways or tips like, how do I start? Who should I be collecting? How do I store my stuff? I mean, there's all kinds of different questions you can ask, obviously, and there's so many different groups out there especially for wrestling cards now. We have a Discord channel. There's Facebook groups. There's just so many ways to go out there and reach out. And somebody is going to, and many people are going to reach out and say, hey, this is kind of cool. What are you into? You like the girls? You're into like, the big muscle head guys? I mean, there's a lot of people out there to help all the time. That's what's so cool about this community.
Well, and Tony, you're the prime example of how you consume modern content because you don't watch it either.
I treat it just like any other sport. I treat it like, to me, social media is my sports center. So I just go on there and get all my highlights. I can't even pronounce half these guys' names. So, I mean, I just go and I watch it. And that's why I don't do box breaks. I feel embarrassed doing a box break going, yeah, this is, his parents know who he is. And then just go move on. It's like that. I can't figure out some of these guys' names. So I just consume my content by, getting highlights. So like, hey, I haven't watched a single show or episode of AEW since its inception. So
wow, not one whole show.
One whole show. I haven't watched it. I watch all highlights. So when I see, Moxley's returning, I see the highlights. I see the fan chanting. I see his reactions like that. That's pretty cool, man. And that's how I just absorb my content. And it's kind of how I see online through social media. I kind of see who's getting the pop, who's not getting the pop, who's getting heat, who's not being talked about. It's like, okay, well, nobody talks about Dexter Lumis, and I don't care because he doesn't talk either. So it's just there's just a lot of ways to go out there. This community is so helpful in getting. When I switched from years of being a master set collector, and then of course I couldn't keep up once Topps got the license in 05. I just gave up. I lost my interest in collecting. And then I got back into this after the pandemic started, and I got back into this. I said, you know what? I'm going to be a player collector for the first time. What should I do? Well, Kurt Angle's a client. He's a friend. I'll collect Kurt Angle. And so I said,
exactly. And then you've got an attachment to it now. Like that.
I have attachment. So when I call or text them like that, I make some kind of reference. Like I just picked up this Olympic cards. Like I might have one of those laying around. So, no, you don't. So it's just, and then I decided, hey, I should go after somebody that's more modern, just because. And I literally just looked at pictures of people who are in the current product. And I just go, I can't pronounce you. I don't know how to pronounce it. I don't even know who you are. I don't know what you are. And then I said, okay, Dexter Lumis, it looks cool. Musclehead guy, tattoos, I can relate, And I got into it. And then of course my wife made that comment and I'm like, oh, well, I'm kind of committed now. So, I mean, but again, the community has been great. Like when I made a post on social media, like, hey, I'm into Kurt Angle stuff and I now collect Dexter Lumis stuff. I literally had people go, hey, send me your address. I'm going to send you some stuff, get you started. Yeah. And that was like, I don't think that happens in other sports. I don't know. I don't collect other sports. So I'm told it doesn't happen.
Ken, I'll let you go ahead.
I mean, honestly, I don't really have an answer for that because to be honest, I'm kind of in that same situation as Mike and Tony to an extent, because what I know about current wrestling is the stuff that I see on Twitter. I just can't get into the current WWE. Okay, I'm going to be 43 in a week.
Bunch of babies here.
I am but I am at that age where everything was better 20 years ago. Everything was better 25 years ago. And that's all sports, and that's wrestling included. I watched it when I was a kid through Hulkamania. I kind of got out in 91, came back, a little bit of the ways into the Monday Night Wars. But I watch it now, and, my wife would even watch it with me, and, it ebbs and flows. I don't know if it's who's producing the shows or what, but it's just not been able to keep our interest the last 5 years. I've tried AEW as well. I don't know if it's that the storylines aren't as good or any of that kind of stuff, but we try, and I'll watch Royal Rumble and I'll probably watch through WrestleMania, but the odds are it's not gonna catch me like it used to. So I'm kind of in Mike's, I like the guys from the Monday Night Wars era and the late 80s, early 90s. And, if I do collect something, it's usually those kind of things that I just happen to randomly find.
So when a wrestling card set comes about and they start including, they almost always include legends in their sets. Would those be things that you'd be interested in collecting then, card-wise, when it comes to modern product?
I want to interrupt you 1 second, and then I'll go to him. Tony, what you exactly just said is why I'm so excited for Prism. Like, that's what I'm waiting on. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, and I like heritage. I've always liked the concept of heritage. So yeah, I do like some of that, but just not really being into the modern product either. Because of that, I'm still removed from even the older. And I get what Mike's saying. Like, I follow a lot of the wrestling guys on Twitter. I retweet a lot of them. But some of the guys that collect the older stuff that I like from that era, I get tired of seeing them crap on AEW and all the people that love AEW and just all that. And there's not a lot of guys that are just kind of in that, outside looking in like Mike and I, or I don't know where those guys are, I should say. I mean, I'm sure there's plenty of guys like us. But yeah, but also another thing is I don't open boxes anymore. I don't do that. I've stopped playing the trading card lottery. So, I just have my individual searches and I go in and out of things. And maybe after Rumble, maybe WWE keeps me for about a year and all of a sudden I start collecting again. But I've collected since I was 8 years old, 1987. I've collected without pause.
Babies.
But because of that, at that point, you could collect everything. Even as a kid, it was kind of easy to collect multiple sports. Now you can't do that. And now that I've been in this hobby for 35 years, I have so many projects. I'm the epitome of the look squirrel when it comes to cards. So, I haven't been super into wrestling cards in about 3 or 4 years. I keep an eye on them because I follow I follow you guys. I watch the YouTube. I follow the guys on Twitter, but it is, like I said, I'm definitely like Mike in that it's kind of hard to follow because there aren't as many, or I don't know where the guys are that are like us that are maybe more of the older wrestling fans.
Yeah. And that's why I kind of say that, I'm on the peripheral edge of things. Right. And so I had a lot of fun tracking down the carnation set and build out the little oddball, food issue carnation set. I had fun building out the 85 Topps set. That came out right around the time that I had started collecting baseball cards, but we didn't have the wrestling cards in my little town. They weren't in the gas station like the other sports were. And so I had fun tracking that down. And I tracked down the Canadian Swanson set and the Canadian Hostess sticker set and some of those other sets from the 80s and early 90s. And I had a lot of fun with those products. And I started to have a connection to those products and those wrestlers that I grew up watching. And I had a ton of fun doing that. But I've just had a hard time bridging that gap from those types of products into the newer stuff, right? When I don't have that current connection to the modern product. And so I just find myself kind of feeling like I'm on the outside looking in, even though I'm dabbling here and there, right?
But dabbling's still good though, because you find things that can be real specific on what is like. You found something like the carnation set. You found something like the hostess sets, which are all cool sets to collect, and they're not impossible to complete. If there's a fun chase involved in it, you get it. But new product, if you're not attached to any characters now, and again, I say they have legends put in those sets, but why would you want to go after just like this small little subset of a main set? I don't know. I mean, to each their own. So I guess there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, I don't even collect subsets. I just collect a guy.
Yeah.
And I think in my case, the things I would be most interested in would be like those WCW NWO autographs.
Oh,
Yeah.
But I would also like to stay married. I love my wife. And so I'm not touching those. I literally have one that Wes sent me a few years ago. And I'm keeping that one forever. But just the prices on those. Those are the kind of things that I would enjoy collecting. But that's an awful lot of money them things are going for.
There you go. Just one card at a time over time.
That's
one
kind of
card a decade. Maybe I can do one a decade.
There you go. Got to live 101 years.
Mike, your recent episode on collecting the active players cards.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I think that's a really good approach that you can take with wrestling. I'm saying you, if that's what you want to do specifically, but that's just something that I think people can collect wrestling any certain way they want to and have fun. I'll just give you, I actually just recorded a specific podcast talking about this, like Ken, I'm with you. I started so many projects that I'm just like, okay, this is getting out of control. I've really narrowed down my focus to my Killer Cross player super collection, trying to be the best at collecting a specific player that I possibly can. And I've had so much fun doing it. And it's been affordable. And I've gotten some super cool cards. I think I've had like 4 one-of-ones now, which like you can't usually say that about any specific card you're collecting. My other thing, I'm not a set collector, but I have I have a complete set and some bonuses of the 82, 83 All-Stars. And I'm going to get those graded. And then I'm going to, I'm content with what I have. But at the same time, it's going to be a continual chase because you can upgrade the grades if you so chose to, but then you can also upgrade to signed versions of those same cards. And so it's a constant chase, yet you can still be content with what you have. So just kind of, you can go with what you want. And then on the more modern aspect, I just pick and choose. I'll see like a gold refractor or some cool autograph card here and there of like a Charlotte or Becky or Austin, The Rock, like whatever. Like I just pick and choose. If to kind of put this in perspective with the AEW stuff, me and Tony, we split a case of that stuff just because I thought it was a good buy to buy the first ever Upper Deck product, and I'll just sit on it and then sell it.
The price we got into it, we couldn't pass that up.
Yeah, we got in super, super early before they were raising the prices on them, and I don't plan on opening any of it now. I think some of their designs are cool, and I love hearing the buzz and seeing the sales around. That's just awesome for wrestling cards. But I'm with Tony. Like I watch most of the show's highlights. If there's some kind of big match or a story buildup, I will tune into a pay-per-view or to TV or something like that. And Ken, like you said, I don't miss the Royal Rumble through WrestleMania season. Like that's my jam. But I'm kind of with you guys, despite knowing a lot about it. I think my interest in the cards is actually more so that it's actually in the cards. It's the parallels. It's how many of this were made. Is the autograph on this one different than this one? If it's the same, like it's more about cards and card design and collecting than it actually is wrestling, which is very strange. But that's how I've connected a little bit more with modern stuff. And my emotional attachment goes more towards the vintage stuff, because that's what I love still to this day. I would just as soon watch a 1995 WCW random pay-per-view on Peacock than I would turn on Raw. So, and that's just my choice. But the other thing inadvertently is that all that vintage stuff is what seems to be appreciating in value over time. So the stuff that I want to keep is the stuff that I could keep for as long as I want and then cash out on it later. It's not something that I'm trying to make money on. So that's just kind of where I'm actually more closer to you guys than you think as far as like modern product, but I'm also like not afraid to, there's a huge group of AEW and indie card collectors out there, and they're the nicest group of people within the wrestling card community is great as a whole, but the guys that are doing indie and AEW stuff are, taking it to another level as far as helping each other out, helping each other find out specific types of cards within sets or corrected information on those things. So, if you find yourself attached to a specific talent, talk about modern, Roman Reigns or, Becky, somebody like that's kind of pretty self-explanatory, but maybe you like MJF or Moxley or CM Punk, somebody like that. I think that it's more fun in wrestling to just get attached to a specific talent and then kind of work your way backwards. Or if you can't connect with modern wrestling, because I know there's a lot of people that don't, like, unless you're specifically into a card design, I don't know why you even bother. It's no different than people who are just nonstop vintage baseball. Like, that's your wheelhouse. That's what brings you the joy and love, and that's what you should stick with. It's kind of where I'm at. I dabble with modern, but the 80s stuff is like my wheelhouse. And then I even like to go way backwards occasionally. Like when I found I don't remember the guy's name. It was 1889, I think, was the print on the card. And I was like, this is awesome. This is like one of the first wrestling cards ever made. So I don't know if that helps you guys or not, but.
Yeah, I think it does. And I think that's really kind of the gist of my question overall is finding my place. It seems I'm very comfortable in the sports world, and I'm very comfortable that, both in the vintage world side of things and the modern side of things, but it just, for whatever reason, even though I've got a connection to parts of that wrestling past, it just felt different, or it feels different to me. And so I think, like you said, maybe helping to continue to focus in on, what aspect of wrestling cards am I enjoying the most, and don't feel like I have to do it all, or don't feel like I have to connect to the modern product in order to still be engaged in the overall wrestling card world. I think is going to be a thing for me to focus on going forward.
There's plenty to collect if you're going to be an era collector. There's plenty to collect within any era. So just because you already have carnations and things like that, there's so much other product that was released during that time frame that'd be fun to chase after. That gives you that feel, that nostalgia of that time frame.
One other thing I'll say real quick, and then Ken, I'll let you say something if you want to chime in. I said that I'm not opening any AEW product. I'm not like really attached to any of the talent, but I keep seeing those Dynamite and those Pyro parallels and the off the top rope and the I think was it Wednesday in Action? I think is what this called. Like those subsets and those parallels are amazing, and like I want to go buy at least one. But then I'm like, okay, well, I'd have to find the talent that I don't mind watching. Is it Cody? Is it MJ? Like, I like those guys. Like, I like watching them. But for some reason, I can't connect with them as much on the cardboard front. But the design of the card is what's drawing me in. So maybe I'm in the minority where I'm like, the card design is actually pretty cool over the actual talent. I don't know.
They are pretty. They're around here somewhere. I opened a couple boxes. They're around here somewhere.
No, I mean, I run into that same thing with other sports, and I don't really collect much of anything that's ultra modern. Just like I said earlier, not only was wrestling to me better 25 years ago, so was baseball, so was football, so was basketball. So those are the things that maybe that's another reason I don't open product. But yeah, just not being that into that. But I'm also not going to force myself. Right. Even if I do like the design, because I have run into that. Oh, I like this design, or I like this, or I like that. And maybe I'll buy the random card that fits that. And then I will say that a year later, I'm like, why the heck did I buy this? And, I end up moving it. But yeah, I mean, I get what you're saying about designs, because I run into that, because I've never been, even in all my collecting, even though I'm wearing a Dale Earnhardt, pullover, most of my favorite players that I've always had have been those second, third, fourth tier guys. Mm-hmm. So they haven't been in a lot of those cool insert sets, especially when you're talking to stick and ball sports where, there's how many baseball players and there's a 25 card insert set. So unless you were collecting Griffey, McGuire, who those guys were, Russ Davis was who I collected. Have you ever even heard of Russ Davis?
I have.
Oh, okay. Well, most people are probably going, who the hell is Russ Davis? So I wasn't getting all of those cool ones, but I have found myself actually going back and getting some of those. Oh, hey, I want one of these Dufex cards, and this is the guy I like the best out of the set. So I found myself doing that as well. Not necessarily with wrestling, but.
Well, one other thing I'll say that maybe will help you guys as far as that goes. The thing that I've discovered is if I do buy a card because I let on a whim, I liked this. I saw this person in the main event. I want to pick up one of their cards, or I like the design. Like I said, that's been the one aspect of my actual PC that I've been very flexible with. So, if something comes up and I get an option to pick up a 101 cross card or a better version of an All-Stars card than what I have, that's the stuff that I end up selling off to pay for the stuff that I want to keep. So it's stuff that I'll keep, but push comes to shove, I could eventually sell it off. But I don't know. It's hard to explain. Like, I think it's a fun aspect for me to dabble with that stuff, but also not have a huge emotional attachment to it. And also not like hoarding at the same time. That's why I'm not a set collector other than the All-Stars set. So, I don't know if that helps people or not. I'm just kind of thinking out loud of different ways that people can go about it.
That's good stuff.
Tony, you're up. We were talking about a lot of AEW. Go for it.
Nice segue.
Yeah.
My question's real simple. I want to know of what you guys have seen on social media, and as we've already discussed, most of us aren't even watching the current product on any level except for highlights. How do you like the way that Upper Deck has handled the promoting of the AEW license?
Let me also say before you guys answer, how do you think they've done promoting it? Because you're not like us and on the inside of the wrestling bubble.
Anybody?
Go ahead.
Anyone? Bueller?
I mean, I do like that they have definitely put more attention. I feel like they've put more attention into it than Topps has put in to their WWE product. I follow Chris Carlin on Twitter and, a lot of those other places, and they have done a lot with it. I'm not a big fan of the design. I've heard a lot of folks kind of say the same thing. It is kind of a boring design, but I am also thinking they probably threw this together as quickly as they could to get to market, and it took longer because of production issues. But this was just their first one. I think they've done a good job of promoting it.
I mean, let's be honest too. They've actually even had it. When's the last time you've ever seen any wrestling trading card product being advertised on television?
Yeah.
See, I haven't seen that because I'm not watching wrestling.
I'm not either, but
But there you go.
Social media has made it very clear. Like, that was so cool tonight. Watch on Dynamite that another Upper Deck commercial promoting their product again. And it was a build up to the release, and since the release, they're still promoting it.
And I shouldn't be surprised because Upper Deck does a good job with NHL too. Like, they have guys opening packs on some of those shows on the NHL network. And they do a lot of things like you'll see Upper Deck. So I'm not surprised that they're doing it. And I'm glad that they are. And hopefully that's one of those things that, brings some more people in. Some of the people that maybe were the action figure people or just the t-shirt and cap people.
Oh, they're being smart about it too. Now he just brought up action figures. So there's a level of parallel cards that they've done right now that Upper Deck is including in the next series of action figures coming up. You can only get it in the action figures.
They used to do that in NASCAR, and we've talked about the wrestling and NASCAR parallels. But yeah, I'm not surprised that they're doing a good job of it. I think the product itself probably needs to get better, but again, I still hear people say from time to time, yeah, I was telling somebody that I collect cards and they didn't even know you still made baseball cards. I know we're talking wrestling,
right?
But how many people watching wrestling maybe just truly didn't know because they're not selling those at the merch counter at the live events.
I interviewed a guy like that. I had a series on my podcast called Wrestling Fans Who Don't Collect Wrestling Cards. And one of them was a store owner out in Los Angeles called the Wrestling Guy Store. And up until he opened his store, well, now 8 years ago, he didn't even know they made wrestling cards ever.
So maybe, hopefully Upper Deck's promotion, like I said, I mean, knowing what you've said on that goes along with what I have seen with hockey, and hopefully that's a good thing because like you said, more, what is it that, the rising tide lifts all ships or something. And, hopefully if you can get 25% more collectors, then that's only going to be for the better.
Yeah, and I've seen some of those ads or some of those promotions getting discussed and being mentioned on social media and during some of the other wrestling podcasts, and that's been very encouraging because I feel the same way. Regardless of the sport, I think increasing its presence in kind of mainstream culture and getting more eyeballs on it is going to be helpful. And I like what I've heard from Upper Deck and the conversations and the interviews I've heard with different members of their team who've been involved in the product development and getting the product off the ground, I think has been encouraging. And so I hope that they're able to continue to build that collecting base with some creative marketing, with some creative product integrations, just to continue to broaden that collector base. And I think when we see that type of thing succeed, if it succeeds with wrestling, if we see it succeed with kind of the product tie into the figures with cards in the figures, just like they had in racing in the past, if we start to see some success with those types of creative approaches, I think we're going to see the entire card community continue to grow too. And that's also encouraging to me. And so, yeah, I'm glad that they've got this. I think it provides a sense of competition as well. Originally, we thought it was going to be between Topps and Upper Deck, but now it's going to be between Panini and Upper Deck, between the two rival promotions. I think that's great because I think that's when I was into wrestling before, when it was WCW against WWE. which one is going to come up with the bigger and better thing that's going to grab our attention that week. And I hope that we start to see more and more of that here between AEW and WWE and Panini and Upper Deck as well. So I'm excited to see what develops.
Panini versus Upper Deck. That's so pro wrestling. One thing that I want to say that they did that completely kind of turned me upside down. Tony, me and you both know how stuck in their ways traditional wrestling card collectors are.
Mhm.
All of a sudden, Upper Deck says, hey, we're going to have CM Punk E-Pack cards. And the wrestling community is like, oh, CM Punk, oh, cards. Wait, what's an E-Pack?
Yep.
And the fact that so many of them were willing to jump into something new and try a different way to do something, and then ended up like, some people had some hiccups. Tony, didn't you have a problem with your order?
Yeah, my order got lost in the mail.
So, but like the fact that there's those hiccups, and you're not the only one, but there were some hiccups along the way. But the fact that people within the wrestling card community were willing to try something new like that, and then by the time they got the card, they were just like overwhelmed with how cool it is. And Upper Deck has been involved with the wrestling card community. Like I see them tweeting back at people. They've been on the Card Foundation. They sent Chris, who is the diehard Daniel Bryan Danielson.
It's something oversized, promo.
Yeah, is that the one? Did they use that at the National?
Use it at the National, yeah.
They sent that.
Display.
They sent that to him because we all reached out to Upper Deck and we're like, hey, this is the guy that needs that card if you're giving it away. And sure enough, they gave it to him. So the fact that they're engaging with the community is building a rapport there. But Mike, it's kind of like you said, there's this huge groundswell of AEW. And then over here, there's the WWE guys. The WWE guys are more into, it seems like, Brock, Hogan, Flair, vintage stuff. While these AEW over here, they're the ones breaking boxes. They're the ones talking about the autographs that they pulled. And it's really starting to remind me a little bit of the Monday Night Wars, but in the card aspect.
And I love that.
Yeah, it's fun.
I love it. I love watching it. It gets a little bit to the point where sometimes, very rarely, but there's like some name calling. People have to block somebody like that. But that's life as all. That's welcome to social media, people. But it's just it's fun overall to see people out there, boasting about their box breaks. And then it's a bit of a divide, though. It's a little bit of a divide, obviously between WWE and AEW guys. But overall, I think it's fun to watch this kind of like competitive type of thing translating all the way down to trading cards. It's kind of cool. Well,
and Ken said that, the relating this back to hockey, they had guys doing breaks. I'm actually seeing wrestlers out there promoting their own cards. Like, when's the last time we saw anybody from WWE? Like, they'll sometimes send out a picture about, hey, I just signed all these stickers, or I signed my cards. But no, they're actually like promoting the brand and the card and making interesting, funny comments about a picture or a pose or something on their card. So that just does nothing but boosts the engagement and the viewership of, hey, there's cards out there. And with so many people watching AEW now that maybe don't even collect anything, they see cards, they see wrestlers promoting it, and they say, oh, I want to be a part of that. Oh, I can buy this person's card for $5. I want to do that, and then it just builds from there like it has for all of us. So I'm with you guys. I think that the promotion has been great. I love seeing the divide. It reminds me of Monday Night Wars, like I said, and I can't wait to see what Upper Deck does. And it's going to be a fun battle to see Panini and Upper Deck and who can put out the better product. Anybody got anything else on that before we go to the next one?
Do we have a next one?
We do.
Oh.
I'm actually donating my question. Usually it's my question. However, me and Mike were talking about something in DMs on Twitter, and it was such a good topic, and I thought everybody would have a good input on it. So I was like, I'm going to donate my question. So Mike gets a bonus.
So Zhan kind of hinted at it a little bit in his last comments that he was making, and that is this idea of doing things a little bit different in the wrestling card community. And he talked about the AEW experiment with E-Pack and putting these first cards out on E-Pack. Well, Topps had just done that over the last year with the living set. And that's something that I had done in baseball in the past. And so when they launched the WWE Living Set early 2021, I was like, I'm going to go ahead and do this. I'm going to get in from the ground and start building out this set from the beginning. And I actually did that. I've got 3 full sets that I've put together, 1 for me to keep and 2 that I was hopefully going to be able to sell at some point to be able to cover the cost of the one that I wanted to keep for my own collection. And it's one of those things that as I built those sets and continue to build those sets, there were very few people who seemed to be talking about it. The Card Foundation guys did a segment every week where they were talking about it. Occasionally we would see tweets get put out here and there about what the current releases are, what the print runs were. But you didn't have a lot of people talking about the WWE Living Set, and the print runs really, weren't very strong, especially once it got started. I was curious what you guys thought about that product and what you think about what future it has now that we know the 96 cards that were created are going to be, it's dead. It lived and now it's dead at 96. And so just curious on what you guys thought about that product and kind of where you see it fitting into the overall world of cards now that it is going to be no more.
I guess I'll turn it around a little bit on you. How is the Topps Living Baseball? Like, how do the baseball collectors react to that set?
It also lost some popularity. I built the first about 250 cards or so. And then honestly, I missed a couple weeks because I was on vacation and I stopped. I kind of lost interest in it from a baseball side of things. And so there are still some of those cards that have some good traction. Some of those rookie cards have some good traction, but overall it's also continuing to lose a little bit of steam as it's now in its 3rd or 4th year.
Ken, what do you think?
So I believe the lowest print run was sub 500, if I'm correct, on the WWE Living.
Correct.
So assuming that Tony and Zhan don't have a set of these, we on this panel have 4 of the possible 470 something complete sets because I actually have all of them. I signed up for the subscription where they just redid every week. Mm-hmm. So I didn't have to put any work in. Like I didn't have what Mike had happen with baseball where, he missed a couple of weeks and then it happened. Now I will say I'm missing 2 cards because USPS said they delivered them a week and a half ago and I still have not received them. So I don't know if I'm going to have to go buy those 2 just to complete it or what I'll do. I will say, and going along with, there wasn't a lot of talk out there. I was very disappointed in what they did with that. Especially I had high hopes because of what they had done with baseball, which I don't collect baseball. Now I bought like 10 Bo Jacksons when the Bo Jackson came out. I bought 10 Will Clarks because those were guys I collect going back to the old stuff.
Right.
But there was not one WWE that I, said, oh, hey, I got to go buy a couple extra of these. I was one that talked about it for maybe the first 10, 15 weeks, a little bit. And then I stopped talking about it. Honestly, I had a stack of like 10 or 12 packages from Topps that I opened at once because I didn't even pay any attention to what it was. I had signed up for the subscription. I was underwhelmed. I did not like the artwork from the get-go. I thought it looked too, I don't know, comic bookish, maybe. They weren't, is where the baseball living set, they have a little bit more of a real feel or like they're based after the 53 Topps baseball set where, okay, they're not, I think you all get what I'm getting. Everybody's nodding their head.
They seem to be comical in a bit in some of their designs.
Yeah.
There was complaints in the early runs too with, certain people's hands didn't look like hands. It looked really weird.
Yeah.
I mean, it was just design wise, the artist, no knock on the artist. I can't draw a stick figure, but this didn't seem like it held up to other living sets they put out. Like their Star Wars line is beautiful.
Mm-hmm. Agree totally. Cause I can't draw a stick figure.
Yeah.
So I'm not trying to criticize them. I'm just saying personally, I didn't care for the artwork. And the other thing, and you know what? I didn't realize that their contract was running out at the end of the year. So that makes what I'm about to say to me even more egregious, is that the selection of who they put in there was a lot of hot garbage. The earliest debuting WWE person, we had Hogan had that Mr. America card or whatever.
Yep.
But outside of that, at least maybe they put some guys out toward the end that were earlier. But the earliest debuting guy was The Undertaker, who was 1990. There were no 80s guys in there at all. I get that some of the new people may not care about those, but you also have a lot of guys like Mike and I, and you guys that have watched, wrestling for 20, 30 years that might have been interested to have had a, for me, King Kong Bundy card or a Mr. Perfect card. Those were guys I really liked. And not only did they have that, they had, technically, didn't they have access to all the WCW guys too because of the, so they really essed the bed. I really wanted to just say it, but they really crapped the bed on it. And they're putting in guys that literally, there were some weeks where I would see a post and I'm like, who the hell are these guys? I get it. I don't watch the new stuff, but these weren't, I'm not saying that about Roman Reigns and Becky Lynch. I know who the top people and a lot of even the mid-card people are, but I think were they putting people from like NXT that were
half of the people they were putting on there weren't even on the roster anymore.
So they really did a garbage job with that set. And again, you would think that if you knew that contract was coming up and you might lose it, well, maybe you should go ahead and put Hogan in there and Andre the Giant and at least get your money out of it. Right. And it would have made the long-term collectability of that set better. Again, had there been, who do we hear about of those old guys all the time? We hear about Andre the Giant. We hear Hogan. Yeah, he was Mr. America or whatever. But these are the names, and these guys were not even in there. And yeah, they honestly crapped the bed on that. But I don't think they really cared about the WWE product and license as a whole. As we go back to talking about, look at what Upper Deck is doing with AEW.
Right. Yeah, I saw from the get-go, everybody seemed super excited. And then as they started coming out, the interest just waned. Several reasons. You guys have touched on a few. I saw a lot of people, and this is for me looking at the outside. I would kind of dabble with them. I think I have the Karrion Kross, of course, but I also have I bought some Undertakers because I just really liked the way that it looked. And then I bought the Steve Austin because that was the very first one. Oh, and I have a Mr. America, but another thing with that is like I was able to buy the Mr. America on eBay for less than what I could buy it from Topps. So then that became a whole issue. Like, why would anybody buy from there if they can just end up getting it on the secondary market for cheaper shipped than what Topps is charging? So going back on the complaints that I would see from the outside people that were actually collecting the set, it was the artwork, it was the choice of talent, and then it became these egregious errors, like having the wrong bios and having parts of the cards cut off where it just didn't look, you couldn't even read the bio because it was cut off, the wrong person's image matching that bio, etc. Just so many bad things, and people just kept holding out for this, and then it got to the end and people still didn't get what they want. Topps loses the license. My hope originally was kind of what they did with Topps Now, because a lot of the WWE stuff, if you go back and look at the Topps Now stuff, a lot of it was like really low print runs. Like, there might only be 30 of a card that got ordered. So that puts a demand after the fact on the secondary market where somebody decides they want to collect a certain talent. They need to go back and find that now. And then it becomes expensive. But the other thing that they did that I actually saw a lot of people talking about that they wish they would have done was serial numbers, parallels, autographs, but making them very, very hard. Like maybe just like putting out 1 or 2 or 5 and making it more of a chase as opposed to, they're only going to make so many that are ordered. But at the same time, there's, everybody's going to have the same card. I saw a lot of people talking about that too. So I don't know if that maybe is a slight shift in the way that people are collecting, as they want the paralleled serial number or autograph stuff also, or if it was just a culmination of everything. But that's kind of the big complaints I saw on the outside. I think, years from now, people may go back and want to get a complete set of this because of, look at Monty Gum, like one of the worst wrestling card sets ever, because everything on it is spelled wrong. They've got the wrong names on the wrong guys, but all of a sudden that set has created this cult following where people actually want to go back and get those cards now, which creates a demand. Prices go up. People are grading them. So I'm wondering if that actually happens to this Topps Living Set. I could be wrong. Maybe it's one of those things where all of us right here talking, we can all relate to a lot of the names that are in the Monty Gum set. But 20 years down the road, are they going to be able to relate to some of the names, as Ken said, that were hot garbage that were put into this set? Like, I don't know that, some of these names were like blip on the radar in WWE. So I don't know. It'll be interesting to see in a few years what happens with that set. I think there will be I almost think actually there will be a little bit more of a demand down the road than there would be for when it was released. And it could be a nostalgia thing. It could be just because it was so bad, it's good. I don't know. Thoughts? Anyone?
Yeah, I think that's especially early on, it started out of the gate with Stone Cold being number 1, right? You had Undertaker at card number 10. But then, like Ken said, you went a long time before you had any of those legends from the 80s, right? Like you said, Hogan with the Mr. America card, but it wasn't until 49 and 50 where you had Miss Elizabeth and Macho Man, and we never ended up with any of those other guys like Andre the Giant or those other stars from the 80s. British Bulldog made it in, Hitman made it in, and some of that kind of stuff later on. But you went so far early on with a lackluster lineup that wasn't continuing to build excitement and momentum. And I think that really hurt things, I don't know, maybe one of the shining points, how many gobbledygooker cards are out there outside of the living set? So maybe
Mr. America too. Like that there was some stuff in there that I was like, I think this is their first card. And I saw some people, Card Foundations talked about it, and some others have talked about, like, is this the rookie? Is this the first card? So you're right. I mean, at least it did create a debate about that.
But is it a rookie card? Okay. I had to throw it out there.
It wouldn't be a show if somebody didn't throw that out there.
Not at least in the next 6 to 8 months.
Man,
all right, guys.
I could say so much about that living set.
We'll say it. We're talking about it.
Well, for me personally, a lot of things play into it. It's like that. The Panini acquisition of the license was something that there's a few of us that knew about that many months ago. I mean, that's why we kept biting our tongue about it and couldn't say anything about it. That's when we had that breaking news thing where I got Adam on, because he was one of the early guys to know about it. And I had been chatting for a while with the lead writer of a lot of the past several years of WWE product. And he kept letting me know about what was happening, what was going on based on what he heard and what he saw. He took over that living set stuff after all those errors happened. I think it was some Roman Reigns stuff backwards.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
If you notice, there's no errors going forward from that point. He took over all that stuff. And we have to understand too, most of the stuff was drawn and conceptualized already many, many months in advance. So they never got around to making a Hulk Hogan or an Andre the Giant or a Vince McMahon card of anything like that. Never got around to it. Once that license was in jeopardy, which was usually around, I think it was like end of May, beginning of June sometime, when that started buzzing around, there was no more interest in, like, well, we're not going to go back and get the artists to go and start making some of these, legends guys anymore. Forget it. They really treat it like garbage. So Topps had the right idea, and that set was supposed to be the living set. It was supposed to go on and on and on, and we would have gotten around to those guys eventually. But all that stuff, those last 30, 40 cards that came out, they were already in the can. It was already done. I mean, why go out and spend more money to make more cards for something just to appease a small number of people to go out there and get those legends like that? I mean, I get it. I was disappointed. I didn't sign up for it at all. I only have what I have because I did a trade deal for some product with the head writer for that product. So like that, he traded me I had like 8 cards total. I have like a Razor Ramon. I'll just get Scott to sign the damn card for me and be happy with that. And then that was, pretty much it. I mean,
well, I get that, but I guess my counterpoint would be, what freaking genius thought, hey, we don't have to put more than 2 big names in the first 40 cards.
Oh, the release schedule was horrible. I mean,
because
I'll
you're
give you
going
that.
to lose interest. Like, Mike talked about where he missed a couple of weeks because he was on vacation and then he just dropped off.
Yeah.
Well, your numbers, if you continue to put out subpar people, and they should have known that just because of, for no other reason than the baseball living set, that, you need to have a star once a month, put a superstar,
Right.
a pure legend in there.
They didn't have to pair things the way they paired them. I think the distribution on it was done poorly. They don't have to pair them like that. You don't have to put a tag team together. You could force the collectability, like, oh my God, they put out a Road Dogg, but no, Billy Gunn. So, but I got to go get him later, kind of thing. They could have created that. They could have created more of a collectability, like Zhan said, thrown in 5 autographs. I got to keep ordering because I might get lucky and get that card. I might get that card. Those numbers would have gone up then because I got to keep ordering for that autograph card or that parallel card or that serial numbered card or something like that. So yeah, their distribution on that was done poorly. But as far as like how they released them, they could have done a better job of that. They didn't have to put Miss Elizabeth with Macho Man. You could have put Macho Man by himself with, whoever, pick
Right.
other some low grade guy from NXT on if you wanted to. You could have done, and they could put Miss Elizabeth with. You could have put Miss Elizabeth, Trish Stratus would have been fine, or something like that, or Miss Elizabeth with Alexa Bliss or something, something.
If they would have
something
kept
vintage.
it going, that's kind of like what Impact did with their cards, where
Yes,
they put the numbers sporadically, where if you wanted the whole set, you'd have to just keep buying them because they weren't consecutive ordered cards.
I mean, keeping the numbers consecutive would have been fun because they do that with all the other living set stuff. It's all in consecutive orders like that. But spreading out who is going to be card number 54 and card number 55, that could have been, because the back designs are something that's very simple to do and change over like that. It's the front designs that become.
Speaking of the designs, I do want to say I was a huge fan of the design because it's the 85 Topps, and I just love that design. So I mean, at least it had that going for it. But
there's just so much opportunity there that was dropped, and how they did that was just bad. So,
well, I guess that will close out the show, guys. Thanks for coming on. Great conversation. Always love getting different perspectives on things. Ken, we'll let you start. Let everybody know what you got going on, your content, and where they can find you.
So I've kind of chilled on content. I've gotten a little burnout, but you can find me pretty much anywhere at Beans Ballcard Blog. Other than Twitter, there I'm just Beans B-Card Blog because of character limits. But I'm definitely most active on Twitter. But then I'm also on Instagram, YouTube. Maybe I'll get back a little more active on YouTube in the future. But that's where you can find me.
Mike?
Yeah, you can check out the blog at WaxPackHero.com. You can check out the podcast, the WaxPack Hero Sports Card Minute, pretty much anywhere that podcasts are found. And I'm most active on Twitter as well at the Mike Sommer. If you want to engage there, I'm always looking to have a good conversation about cards and about life in general, I guess.
We need to find someone to do like a parody intro song for Mike, man. So you got like, Wax Pack Hero. Gotta have
that's good.
That would be good.
Corner out there to do it or something like that. They're not doing anything.
Maybe one of those guys. Maybe one of those guys is on Cameo where you can get those custom videos.
There you go.
That's a good idea.
That is a good idea. Guys, thanks for joining us. It's always great to have, like I said, people with different perspectives on here to hopefully help wrestling card collectors and anybody else that's collecting any kind of trading cards. Hopefully some of the knowledge that, the 4 of us can bring to a discussion like this just helps people with the way they're collecting or different ways to think about the way they approach things. So if you guys enjoyed this audio or video, whatever you're listening to this on or viewing, please subscribe, leave us a review on whatever podcast platform you're listening to this on. Make sure to give Ken and Mike follows. We'll have links to their social platforms and YouTube channels and podcasts. We'll put all that in the show notes. Thank you guys for listening. You guys, thanks for coming on. We'll see you.
We're out.